One by one, U.S. Civil Rights Agency dismantles tools to fight discrimination. June the 1st, 2026. Heard on Morning Edition by Andrea Lucas. Here you see people marching for the right to work freely and to be able to not be discriminated. And this is under equal opportunity rights for women, black, people of color, people who are in marginalized groups. So it's not just one specific group. So in 1966, the newly established Equal Employment Opportunity Commission issued a rule to tackle entrenched discrimination on the job. Every year, companies with 100 or more workers would turn over to the government information about race, ethnicity, sex, and job categories of their employees. So the EEO-1 data, as it's known, has helped the federal agency figure out where people of color and women are not getting hired or promoted. So over decades, EEOC's work has led to settlements worth billions of dollars. Now, as part of the realignment of civil rights enforcement under President Trump, EEOC is seeking to end its annual data collection while also getting rid of the 1979 regulation that allowed employers to take certain steps to address race and gender imbalances revealed by the data. So together, the moves would mark an about-face in civil rights agency efforts to fulfill its mission. Andrea Lucas, the Trump-appointed chair of the EEOC, did not respond to NPR's question about the two proposals, which have been submitted to the White House for review. But the interview and public remarks, Lucas has repeatedly warned that programs or policies aimed at helping specific groups such as black people or women are unlawful under its title, its Roman numerals, V11. So I believe that's 7. Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And so if they exclude others, is what they say, it's considered unlawful. So they're basing it on making it seem like it just is only specific to black people in general, when it isn't only specific to just black people. So it's specific to all people who are in marginalized groups that are of color and black women and women, even if they aren't black. So they're not really looking at it as something for all marginalized groups. Even people who are also in alternative relationships, which would include the LGBTQA communities as well, would be under the umbrella of this. But they're not looking at it like that. They're looking at it more like it's only for black people only, or black women only. That's the way it comes off, and they're scrapping it for that reason. So regardless of what has happened before, the way to stop discriminating based on race is to stop discriminating based on race. That's what they claim. So they're using a flipping glass method. So they're basically saying by them having this organization, EEOC, in place is discriminating against other groups. So that's why they're scrapping it. The end, full stop. That's what Lucas said. Fortune Workplace Innovative Summit earlier this month. So I think that that's a more beautiful vision of our country, and I think it's consistent with the text of the statute. So a roadmap of addressing discrimination. So in 1979 regulation, EEOC seeks to rescind was issued with this very dilemma in mind. Can a company remedy discrimination by giving special consideration to those who were deprived of opportunities in the past? So the answer back then was yes. The agency gave the go-ahead for mentoring programs and even hiring targets. So the EEOC says that you can take some of these voluntary efforts even though they will be race or gender conscious, says Shai Feldblum, who served on the commission during the Obama and the first Trump administrations. This is the EEOC's giving employers the roadmap of how they can take race and gender into account in a positive way and not violate law. And so the guideline issued in January of 1979 made it clear that companies first had to document a problem and then come up with a reasonable and time-limited plan for how to increase the number of minorities or women in their ranks. So 5 months later, the Supreme Court embraced the roadmap in a 5-2 decision known as the Weber. The court found that the affirmative action plan to remedy past discrimination was lawful, provided it did not unnecessarily trammel the interests of white employees and that it was temporary. So in 1987, the court issued another decision known as Johnson, extending protection to efforts aimed at helping women. So now known as the Weber-Johnson standard, it is still a law regardless of what happens to the EEOC's 1979 regulation, says Feldblum. But for how long, she's not sure. I think the Supreme Court is just waiting for a case that might allow them to overturn those two important cases, she says. How data has helped root out discrimination, the more imminent change, assuming EEOC's proposals go forward, is the demise of the agency's annual collection of employee demographics. Usually, the data collection begins in late spring. So far this year, there's been no word of it. So since the 1960s, the EEOC has recovered billions of dollars for workers who have suffered discrimination on the job, and in many cases, EEO-1 data played a key role. So is one of the first things that you can look at as you're trying to learn more, says Carla Gilbride, who served as the EEOC's general counsel during the Biden administration. So protecting U.S. workers from unlawful discrimination, already a hard task, could become significantly harder if the government no longer has the data within arm's reach. Gilbride says having to subpoena data would make enforcement far more laborious and less efficient. A lawsuit against Bass Pro Shops. So consider the lawsuit against Bass Pro Shops, first filed in 2011. EEOC alleged the company, formerly known as Bass Pro Outdoor World, discriminated against Black and Hispanic job applicants by not hiring them, and not just at one store either, but across the country, even in places with sizable Black and Hispanic populations. So store by store by store, sort of the same idea, where you had areas that had a significant number of Blacks and Latinos, either zero or very few, at the stores. This was said by David Lopez, who was the EEOC's general counsel at the same time, now leads the Civil Rights, Migration, and Workplace Law Initiative at Arizona State University. And so, bait and tackle Bass Pro Shops. And so that's sort of, you can see here. So EEOC saw a pattern because it had Bass Pro demographic data on file. So the government investigators could easily compare the outdoor gear shop to other retailers in the same counties. And they could also compare Bass Pro workforce to the available pool of workers in the surrounding areas. While the data by itself could not prove discrimination, Lopez says it was a green light to the agency investigators to dig further, and because they had a reason to investigate, they were able to discover that there were managerial comments and that were reflective of discriminatory animus, that they were looking for a certain type of person, says Lopez, someone who was white, according to the government complaint. So Bass Pro called the allegations a threadbare and accused the government of merely relying on a handful of isolated incidences of alleged inappropriate behavior. EEOC investigators later bolstered the case, identifying implicated managers and job applicants by name, compiling a list of dozens of Bass Pro stores with a low representation of Black and Hispanic employees. Finally, in 2017, the company settled for $10.5 million. Bass Pro did not admit to any wrongdoing, but agreed to appoint a diversity director and to make good faith efforts to recruit and hire non-white candidates. Lopez considered the settlement a big win, one of the many he had oversaw in his time of EEOC that were built on data. But you can have a hunch, but there's nothing like the cold hard numbers, he says. Agency chair says data has been misused. Early indications of EEOC's plan to stop gathering data came a year ago. In announcing the opening of 2025 data collection period, Lucas posted a message warning employers of the obligations under federal civil rights law. You must not use the information collected and reported in your organization EEO 1 Component 1 report to justify treating employees differently based on race, sex, and other protected characteristics, she wrote. So in an interview at NPR earlier this year, Lucas explained her missive. She said that a number of companies have been misusing the data, including in ways that have hurt white people and men. Okay, so Lucas believes the only people who know the gender and race of the company's employees are its lawyers and human resource staff. Instead, after 2020 murder of George Floyd, the white police officer, a number of companies published their demographic data as part of a public commitment to address the lack of diversity within their ranks. So, Equal Opportunity Commission Chair Andrea Lucas has served on the commission since 2020, appointed by President Donald Trump. So this is her pictured here. Subsequently, she contends companies began making decisions about whom to hire, promote, interview for jobs based on sex, race, noting some even gave hiring managers financial incentives to hit diversity targets. So that use of demographic data crosses the line. She says all it has to do is motivate in the whole or in part. So your decision making and you're into unlawful territory. So Lucas declined to single out a company by name, citing the confidentiality of the agency investigations, but according to the court documents, EEOC has accused Nike and the New York Times of discrimination against white employees and job applicants. So the two companies are among many of published their demographic data along the diversity-related goals for several years. Focus on data in select cases. So paradoxically, Lucas has at times talked up the importance of data. And so there is no other way to protect victims of harassment and discrimination unless you collect information about them, she said while speaking in April at a conference at Harvard organized by Brandeis Center, an independent civil rights organization. So in the instance, she was defending the EEOC subpoena requiring the University of Pennsylvania to turn over employee information that the agency doesn't routinely collect. So the names, addresses, phone numbers of Jewish employees who may have witnessed anti-Semitic acts on campus. The university has so far refused to comply with the subpoena, noting in court filings that it echoes terrifying periods of history for Jewish communities. So driving a car without a dashboard. The profound changes underway at EEOC have kept David Cohen busy. So the president of the management consulting firm DCI Consulting has fielded many calls from confused clients wondering whether the work they've been doing to promote equal opportunity should continue. So for now, he's telling clients that keeping track of their employee demographics is a smart business move, whether the government requires it or not. Without it, he says the company has no way of knowing if it has a problem, whether it's recruiting from too narrow a pool or has a bad manager somewhere, or is screening out the qualified candidates for no good reason. So it's like you're driving a car without a dashboard and you have no idea what's going on. Am I speeding? Am I not speeding? Is the check engine light on? He says you have nothing. So he's been reminding clients that while priorities have shifted at the EEOC, federal civil rights laws haven't changed. So stay within the law and you will be okay, he says. And so that's pretty much the article. So they're trying to change things. This is an appointed person that is working with EEOC chair Andrea Lucas. She was appointed by Donald Trump. So I feel like they're trying to overturn this program and do away with it altogether. And I just am now learning about this Bass Pro Shops. That's like a shop for people who are into fishing and, you know, the sport of fishing. And what it looks like is like they had less Black and Hispanic representation because they make it seem like more white men are the ones that are involved in fishing, and that it's a white male sport. That's the way it sounds like to me. And so I've never really seen them representing anybody of color in that organization. So I get why they sued them. And they settled out. But this right here, I just thought people should know, people of color, there are programs that we benefited over the years that they're trying to dismantle. And I felt like this was important. I know a lot of people were celebrating and they were eating and they were with family and they were having a good time, but you used to have to stay aware that things are not always what they seem. A lot of times the news doesn't really make light or emphasis on what is going on in the world around us and how it's going to affect us as residents in our community. And a lot of us who are working every day and we're working hard, and you know, we already felt it at the gas pump. You know, the gas was high, now it's kind of going down and shifting back and forth. But then the prices of food, the cost of living just in general, and homelessness hasn't gone away all of a sudden. I feel like what they do is sweep it away, or they criminalize it, and they want to make homelessness be the fault of people who are homeless rather than look at what has caused people to spiral into homelessness. And there's different types of homeless situations, and I don't think they really focused on those things because you have people who are functionally homeless, they still work and they sleep out of their cars, and you have students who are going to school who sleep out of their cars, they just can't afford the rents. And so not all of these people that you see that are on the street are in tents. Some of them are living in and out of hotels. They're living with family members or doubling up, or they're living out of a storage unit, or they're living in cars and vans, or they're bouncing around from place to place and sleeping on sofas, or however they can get by. But homelessness is a lot bigger than what we know, and it is growing. And now you've got this right here being dismantled. This might be the cause of some people's homelessness, because you have discrimination on jobs where you can't even get hired to work somewhere. And so that's what happened with the Bass Pro Shops, where they didn't have people that could work at these jobs because of the color of their skin, or their culture, nationality, ethnicity, or their gender. And so that's the reason why you had places, programs like this in effect, so that you could work at have more opportunity to work at more places, to have employment. So now, by them dismantling these organizations, it's going to get harder for people to find jobs that will even hire them. It has nothing to do that you did anything wrong. It's what you look like, or what you sound like, or where you come from, that you won't even be able to secure a job anymore. So things are going to get hard, folks, whether you believe it or not. We're just at the beginning.